This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of
enough. You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for. So as I do, I was sort of mumbling on about a guitar yesterday, and I kind of had a thought in mind about like how much money does it actually take to get a great guitar. And I kind of wanted to do a video just talking about that and, you know, see if we can spend a few minutes discussing something like this. In this intro, I'm going to be playing a Sterling Cutlass, which they did send to me and they paid me to do a video on, but they didn't ask me to do multiple videos, but I just was impressed with it. And I thought it was like an interesting point about some of this stuff. You'll notice that a string broke, so I think I need to grind down that saddle a bit. But yeah, just this idea about how much should a great guitar cost and what is a great guitar and all that sort of stuff. And the other guitar I'm playing is my own parts caster. So these are sort of two guitars that are around about that $500-600 sort of price range.
What are you doing?
My buddy John March he asked about a Sire guitar. I actually sent him one in the past, and then he was specifically interested in one with a rosewood board. So I demoed one for Sire, and it was the S7 with the rosewood board, and then sent it over to him. He basically took that to a luthier and also put in some pickups, Zex coil pickups, and he's just messaged me sort of today. That Sire looks and plays and sounds better than some Sires I have owned, and it kind of triggered this thought in my head. And I've got another buddy, Chris, who has a Squier Classic Vibe, which he uses. I think that's basically his number one, and he's taken that to a luthier. And I'm not sure if I think it's got stock pickups in it too as well. And just another thing that comes to mind, like Francis Dunnery and also Alan Murphy, these guys were playing Squiers for the key parts of their career. I think Francis Dunnery still does, and it's kind of one of these things where like so much of what we do in gear space and stuff like that just assumes naturally that there's sort of like a linear progression, like as you spend more money guitars get better. But I think really it's not quite like that. It's cause and correlation, they're all over the place, and I think so much of this is subjective. And another part of it is that so much of these guitars are built on CNC machines, and there's like a little bit of magic that goes into this stuff, a little bit of variation when you start to involve people with hands, and also it's pieces of wood that kind of shrink. They're all kind of different weights, no two guitars weigh exactly the same, and in a batch of guitars that come out, those weights could be all over the place. And weight is just one aspect. That must mean that there's other parts, the wood grain is all different. I don't know to what extent, like pickups, how much do they vary if they're machine wound, but if they're hand wound, they're going to vary a lot as well, right? And it's all of these little aspects, and what really makes a guitar great, I think, are a combination of specs, selections, also how you interface with it, are the contours where they're comfortable for you. More important than any of it maybe is for you, like neck shape. In that, if the neck shape doesn't work for you, then the guitar is just probably never going to be great for you. But if the neck shape is comfortable and the body shape is comfortable and the guitar is at a weight that is comfortable for you, I think that's kind of what you need as your starting point for making a guitar great. And that can happen at literally any price, right? So this is, around about £500. We've got roasted maple, locking tuners, which are a good starting point. The body contours are really comfortable. The neck shape for me is comfortable, where it's like this C, which isn't too skinny. The fretwork is decent enough, but fretwork is one of these things where it's like, well, if it's not perfect, that's okay. And at any price range, fretwork is rarely perfect, right? Because if you think of like Sir guitars, I've had Sir guitars that I've picked up out of a box that have just been shipped from the factory. Those are plecked, I think. And even then, when I played the guitar, or my buddy played the guitar, it's like, well, this is like a banjo. These things are, or sitar, these are fretting out all over the place. The issue is that these things move in transit, right? They're shipped across oceans in shipping containers, and these things move, right? It's a piece of wood. It was a once living thing. And so even, like fretwork that's not perfect, I don't think is necessarily the marker of a guitar being inferior, because it happens at every price. It just happens. A simple adjustment of a truss rod can be the difference between like the fretwork seeming like unsalvageable and salvageable. It's kind of a weird thing. I've also seen Fenders coming out of the factory, which like sort of £2,000 price range, where there's loads of relief, and you're kind of like, well, obviously, like my first impression is like, well, that's not ideal, and then you think, well, okay, but it's a truss rod adjustment. Now, in the case where it's an American vintage, actually getting in there and adjusting the truss rod itself is a little bit of a faff, right, where you're going to have to take that guitar apart. And that is probably why, in many guitar shops, you might find guitars that don't have an optimal sort of setup. They're not in their best Friday fit. And I did have a comment from someone who was like, why don't we kind of, like a parts caster type guitar, try mixing and matching stuff? I guess this is basically what Eddie Van Halen did to some extent, right? Until we get the perfect fit. So, you know, so this is a boat neck, Warmoth neck, and it's a V neck, but it's got some shoulder, which is nice. But you think, right, I could try a different neck on this guitar, and, you know, I could try different pickups in here. You know, all of these things cost money, but it's still, I could try, you know, 3 or 4 necks, and it would still come in like way less than a Fender Custom Shop, for instance. That even if you do spend, you know, 3-4 grand on a Fender Custom Shop, unless you've specifically spec'd the things that you're looking for, it might not end up being perfect for you, right? But it doesn't matter. You want to have a look at this one?
Yeah.
The flashy. You did that painting, didn't you? And yeah, so what I'd be looking for really is actually a guitar that is closer to the specs that I know are going to work for me. You know, if I know that a Fender American Professional 2 neck is going to always be pretty skinny, or a Fender Player 2 is always going to be a bit skinny, and then these guitars are just simply never going to be great for me because they're not quite right. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the Fender Vintera 260s neck that I got is like perfectly decent and better than any of the necks that I played on a Strat right up to a Fender Custom Shop for me, except for maybe even like a Fender Mexican road-worn 60s, like those types of necks as well. Instead of the money being spent on, you know, specifically like just a more expensive guitar, target the specs that you want, and then whatever price range the guitar is at, I think it could probably just be a benefit to take this to like a guy that you know that can do great work on guitars. And this is something that both of these guys, John and Chris, have done, and I've done for myself recently. And honestly, like, that is quite a lot of the edge about what makes a guitar great and what makes a guitar like okay for the money is kind of my experience. Like guitars that I've tried from Sire, where it's like, well, this has got a lot of potential. Maybe, you know, like some of the frets are not particularly well polished. Maybe the pickup choices are not optimal, but you can make little adjustments to a guitar or take it to a tech, and even like a non-expensive guitar, I think you can quite easily turn into what is a great guitar and what can be very playable. And this is the other thing that makes a guitar great, is just you bonding with it. And I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of you guys in the comments that hopefully have got guitars across all price ranges that you think this guitar is great for me. Now you might feel kind of shy about this, like, so this K-Line Springfield, I don't know, whenever I put this into someone else's hand, I don't know whether they're going to like it as much as me, because they don't have that same bond. But for me, I know this is a great guitar because it's great for me. Things like good fretwork are not as subjective, and you can ensure those by taking them to like a guy who knows what they're doing, or you can learn to do some of this yourself, right? I've done fretwork. I wouldn't say that I do anyone else's, but it's a learnable skill. It just takes time, and time is one of the things that Some of the cheaper guitars have less time spent on them. Some of the more expensive ones have more time spent on them. If you find someone local to you who can put a bit of time into your instrument and then you spend more time playing your guitar, then you can end up with something, I think, that is really great at pretty much any price, and it doesn't really even correlate. That's basically the point of this video, is that, you know, these are mostly factory built things. They're going to vary. QC varies. Even like the best companies, they have variable QC. If you're looking for a specific thing, like, I want my guitar to be lightweight, I want this type of neck, then you can find these sorts of things kind of all over the map. Finding a great guitar should be possible at any price, essentially, in 2025. Get friendly with a luthier. Shout out to Jeremy from Garland Guitars. Cheers for stopping by.